Hi, Mom. It's me again. I'm going to read a little bit of chapter 27, The Perils of Temperance. Jim just came home. He's going to be getting dinner, and we'll watch a movie, so I don't think I'll be able to get the whole chapter in, but I'll get some in. All right, here we go. It's time to The Perils of Temperance. It's time to return to the story of my life. Well, there I was, enduring terrible affliction. I had many people praying on my behalf, beseeching the Lord to lead me by a more secure path, since the one I was on, they told me, was dubious. The truth of the matter is that although I wanted to want to change, I couldn't truly bring myself to want it. This is because I could see how much my soul was flowering since the raptures and spiritual voices had begun. Except, that is, for when I wilted under the criticism I received and the fears it instilled in me. That whole self-doubt thing. I noticed that I was a completely different person than I had been before. How could I desire a different path than the one that had transformed me? So I placed myself in God's hands and trusted that He would carry out His will in me. He alone knew what was best for my soul. I saw that the road I was on led to heaven, and that I had been on my way to hell before. I tried with all my might to convince myself that the devil was deceiving me and to make myself desire another path, but I was powerless. I offered all of my actions in case there might be a good deed among them in service of this intention. I invoked my favorite saints to free me from the spirit of evil. I dedicated several novenas to the effort. I entrusted myself to Saint Hilarion, and devoted myself to Saint Michael the Archangel. I begged many other saints to petition the Lord to show me the way. Maybe the holy ones of God could be able to obtain the truth from His Majesty and pass it along to me. This went on for 2 years. I prayed, they prayed. But no matter how much we all prayed for God either to lead me on some other path or to reveal the truth upon the one I was on, the spiritual voices continued. At the end of 2 years I had the following experience. It was the feast day of the glorious St. Peter, and I was sitting in prayer when I saw Christ sitting next to me. Actually, to put it a better way, I was aware that Christ was beside me. And I didn't see anything with my bodily eyes or even with the eyes of my soul, but I felt Him there at my side. I realized that He was speaking to me. I had no idea that a vision like this was possible, and at first I was very much afraid. All I could do was weep. With one word, however, Christ reassured me. He restored my customary calm. I felt quiet and blessed and fearless. This was not an imaginary vision. I knew that Jesus Christ was at my side, but I did not perceive His form. I simply felt Him at my right side and recognized that He had always been there and always would be there, witnessing everything I did. Each time I drew my attention within, there He was. Unless I let myself become totally distracted, it was impossible to ignore that He was with me. I rushed to my confessor and anxiously told him everything. "In what form did you see Him?" he asked me. "I didn't see Him," I answered. "Then how did you know it was Christ?" "I don't know how, but I can't not be aware that He is beside me. I saw Him. I felt Him very clearly. My soul has been more easily and more deeply recollected ever since. In fact, the prayer of quiet is almost continuous now. It is an exceedingly clear state. Besides, the effects are very different from what I used to experience." All I could do was offer metaphors and analogies to try and explain myself, but there is no adequate comparison for this vision. A very holy and spiritual man named Father Pedro de Alcantara told me that this vision is one of the most sublime we can receive, and also the most difficult for the spirit of evil to interfere with. Other learned men have confirmed this. Women like me, who know very little, are incapable of describing this state. Maybe men of learning can explain it better. For instance, if I say, "Well, I do not see it with the eyes of the body, nor do I see it with the eyes of the soul, because it is not an imaginative vision," you will rightly wonder how I can be more certain He is at my side than I would be if I actually saw Him. You must not think of this experience as being like a blind person or someone in a dark room who cannot see the person next to him. It's a little bit like that, but not very much. In the case of blindness or darkness, the person perceives things through his other senses. He will hear the other person stir or speak. He can touch him. In this kind of vision, it is not dark, and there are no other senses operating. Yet the vision reveals knowledge to the soul that is more radiant than the clearest sunlight. I don't mean that you directly perceive the sun or its brightness, but there is light, even though you don't see light, and it lights up everything. It illuminates the mind so that the soul can enjoy the great blessings the vision brings with it. The sense of connectedness to God is not uncommon. Seasoned practitioners of silent prayer, particularly if they have experienced the prayer of quiet and the prayer of union, sometimes find that as soon as they sit down with the intention to pray, the one they are praying to seems to be there listening. They become aware of feelings of tender love and faith and a deep beginning of their most cherished resolutions. This is a blessing from God, and anyone who experiences it should be grateful. It is a sublime prayer, but it is not a vision. In the prayer of quiet and the prayer of union, His Majesty makes Himself known through the effects He leaves in the soul. But this vision I'm talking about is different. The soul sees very clearly that Jesus Christ, Son of the Virgin, is present. In the other states of prayer, the soul feels divine influences. In this vision, however, she not only experiences these holy feelings, but she knows that the most sacred humanity has become her companion and that He wants to grant her favors. Who said it was Jesus Christ? The confessor asked me next. He told me himself, I answered, many times. Before Christ told me who He was, He impressed Himself so firmly into my consciousness that I knew He was there, even though I didn't see Him. And before He did that, He told me He was coming. If a person I had never met but only heard of came to speak to me while I was in a dark room or blind and told me who he was, I would probably believe him. But I wouldn't be able to assert the fact with as much confidence as I would if I had seen him with my own eyes. With this vision, without being able to see Him, I could confidently claim that Christ was with me. He carved such deep knowledge into the soul that I could no more doubt it than I had seen the Lord with my own eyes. Even less. Sometimes our eyes play tricks on us, and we suspect that we might have imagined what we saw. In a vision like this, we might experience a flicker of skepticism, but it is quickly replaced by unshakable certitude. It is the same kind of knowing the soul has when God speaks to her without words. He uses the language of heaven, and it's difficult to translate to mortals. No matter how much we may want to understand, we won't really get it until the Lord teaches it to us through experience. He places what He wants the soul to know deep inside her without images or words. It is worth deeply pondering the manner in which God gives the soul a clear understanding of His desires and truths and mysteries. God often explains the visions He gives to me in this ineffable way. There are a number of reasons why I think that the spirit of evil is least able to interfere in an experience of this nature. If these reasons turn out to be bad ones, then I must be mistaken about the whole thing. The kind of vision that comes without seeing and the kind of language that comes without hearing are so spiritual that the faculties of sense and reason are completely quieted. The spirit of evil has nothing to react against. Sometimes the faculties are momentarily suspended, but usually, I think, they are fully engaged. These visions and voices do not generally occur in the midst of contemplation. In fact, they almost never do. Yet when they do happen, I don't believe we have anything to do with it. It all seems to be the work of the Lord. It's as if food had been put into our stomachs without our eating it or even knowing how it got there. We know very well that it is there, but we have no idea what kind of food it is or how it entered our bodies. In the case of this sublime prayer, the soul doesn't know how it got there. She didn't see anything or feel anything. She didn't even want anything. The intellect never knew that such a thing was possible. In the kind of spiritual voices I was talking about before, God brings awareness of the message to our minds whether we want to hear it or not. We grasp exactly what is being said. It's as if the soul hears with other ears and God makes her listen. She cannot be distracted. It's like this. Someone speaks in a loud voice to a person with good hearing, and the listener does not stop up his ears. He may not be interested in what he's hearing, but he participates by paying attention so that he will understand it. In the kind of spiritual voice I am talking about now, the soul does not play any part. She is relieved of even the minor responsibility of listening. She finds everything already prepared and eaten for her. She has nothing to do but savor it. She is like a person who never bothered to learn how to read or engage in the work of learning, and yet finds that she possesses all knowledge within herself. She has no idea how the knowledge got there. She never studied. She doesn't even know her ABCs. This feels to me like an apt metaphor for this heavenly gift. The soul sees that she has become wise in an instant. Such profound secrets as the mystery of the three divine persons are so clearly understood that the soul would boldly defend these wondrous truths against the arguments of any theologian on earth. She is utterly amazed. She sees that one favor from God is enough to change her completely. A single one of His blessings frees her from attachment to things and replaces it with love for the one who carves out the vessel of the soul, so that she can receive such grace. She does nothing of her own volition to deserve this. She is filled with love for the friend who treats her with such sublime loving kindness that she can never describe it in words. Some of God's favors are so wonderful that people may become suspicious when they see them being showered on a person who has done nothing to merit them. Someone who does not possess a living faith will be incapable of believing in them. So unless my superiors command me to elaborate on them, I intend to say as little as possible about the blessings God has bestowed on me. The only favors I will dwell on are certain visions that might do others some good, or at least prevent souls from being shocked and doubting the validity of their own experience when such things happen to them. If I can help people by explaining the path and the way that the Lord has led me, I will be fulfilling my obligations in writing this account. Back to our discussion of the special kind of understanding the Lord instills in the soul. It seems to me that he wants to convey some knowledge of what happens in heaven. I never knew this until God in his goodness allowed me to see it when he showed himself to me in a rapture. Just as in heaven souls understand one another without language, so it is in this kind of vision. God and the soul understand each other perfectly because this is his majesty's will. No other device is required for these two friends to manifest their love. Two people on this earth who love each other deeply and understand one another well do not require signs or techniques. The mere exchange of a glance is enough to communicate everything that matters. That must be the kind of love unfolding between the soul and her beloved in this kind of vision. Without the soul knowing how, the two lovers gaze directly at one another's face. It reminds me of the way the bridegroom speaks to the bride in the Song of Songs. At least I think that's where I have heard about this kind of seeing. Oh, how wondrous is God's loving kindness! He allows me to gaze upon him with eyes as impure as the eyes of my soul. May this vision teach us, beloved, no longer to look at vile things. Let nothing other than you ever satisfy us again. Oh, how ungrateful mortals can be! What extremes you go to on our behalf, O Lord! I know from experience that what I'm saying is true. I know that whatever I say about you is only a tiny fraction of what you do for the soul you transport to such exalted states. O you souls who have begun to practice prayer and have true faith in your hearts, what good things you can still seek in this life that could compare with the least of these divine blessings? How indeed could any worldly pleasure measure up to the treasures of eternity? Reflect on this. God gives himself wholly to anyone who gives up everything for him. He loves everyone with no exceptions. I am living proof that God leaves no one out. Look how wretched I was, and look at the heights to which he has lifted me. Please note that this account is the abridged version of what has actually happened to me. I'm telling you just enough to place the visions and our other blessings God gives the soul into a meaningful context. I could never describe how the soul actually feels when the beloved gives her knowledge of his secrets and wonders. This joy surpasses all understanding. It so far transcends any pleasure we experience here on earth that once we have tasted it, we can't help but disdain mundane things. All the sweetest earthly delights put together resemble a pile of garbage. I could find it unbearable even to attempt to compare these two kinds of happiness. Even if we were offered worldly pleasure without end, it would not come close to a single drop from the vast, overflowing river God has prepared for us. It's a shame, and I am certainly ashamed. If it were possible to be embarrassed in heaven, my embarrassment would be most acute there. If we do crave all these blessings and delights in eternal glory at the expense of the good Jesus, since when do we help him carry his cross with a Cyrenian? Shall we not at least weep with the daughters of Jerusalem? How can we all enjoy all the pleasures and distractions of this life when we know what it cost him in blood? It's impossible. Do we really believe that our petty aspirations for honor could possibly repay him for the persecution he endured, for the suffering he took on to allow us to prevail forever? Such a path goes nowhere. It's the wrong road. We will never arrive anywhere if we take it. You should shout these truths from the rooftops. God has taken the freedom to proclaim them away from me. I wish I could broadcast these teachings with every breath. As it is, I have been so slow in hearing and understanding God that it is embarrassing even to mention these things. You'll see what I mean. I'd rather remain silent. Instead, I will simply share what comes to my mind from time to time. May it please the Lord to bring me to the place where I might rejoice in the blessings I am writing about. What unexpected glory the blessed ones will enjoy. What happiness they will feel when they discover that in the end, finally and at last, they held nothing back from God. According to their strength and state, they did everything they possibly could for him. The more they had, the more they gave. He who has rejected all riches for Christ will find himself abundantly wealthy. He who has not sought honor for himself, but instead has cultivated humility, will find himself deeply honored. He who is thrilled to be considered crazy, since that's what they called wisdom herself, will find himself exceedingly wise. How few holy madmen are alive today. Our sins preclude this blessed madness. Such fools for God seem to be extinct. Where are the ones who would risk everything and perform heroic feats for love of Christ? O world, how much of your honor is won by the small handful of those who truly know you? We think we serve God better by being wise and discreet. Maybe so, but I doubt it. We jump to the conclusion that we are failing to set a good example unless we act with somber dignity and carry out our duties with cool authority. We think it's weird if a monk wears old, patched robes, and we fear a scandal if a nun slips into ecstatic states. That's the way the world is today. We have forgotten the perfect love and the sublime raptures the saints experienced. In these troubled times we live in, I think this sober mentality causes far more harm than the discomfort created by spiritual teachers who counsel us to reject the things of the world and back up these teachings with action. The Lord converts such sacrifices into great blessings. If some people are scandalized by holy foolishness, it brings other people to their senses. Now more than ever before, we need living examples of what Christ and his apostles suffered for love. So I'll end here, Mom. It's on page 205. We have one more paragraph on that page to finish the chapter. There's a few more pages. So I will talk to you later. Love you. Bye. Bye. Jim says bye. And I gotta stop it. It stopped. Okay, great. No, it didn't stop. Okay, hold on. I'm stopping it now.